I'm going to do a Crime Stopper remote starter in a 2013 Volkswagen Passat. We're going to have to use a key in the installation, so if you don't have an extra key to use in the installation, don't bother trying to do this job. You either need another OEM full key or a valet key. Okay, we're going to do the disassembly of the vehicle. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this flip down pocket here. There's two tabs inside. We're going to use our plastic tool. We're going to get one tab to come around the side here. Then we're going to push over on the whole unit, take it out. Underneath the dash, there's T15 Torx screws. We're going to go ahead and we're going to remove all the screws we can get to. Okay, we should be able to drop the underdash at this point and pull it forward to remove it. To release the diagnostic plug from the rear cover panel, there's three tabs that must be pushed. Two on the bottom and one on the top. This will release the diagnostic plug so we can remove the lower panel. This point on, we're going to remove the side cover. I'm going to remove the trim around the steering column, or the steering column plastic cover. Start with a T25 in the bottom. We'll try to release it from here. We're going to probably have to push up. Here. This is going to reveal two more screws. One here, the 9 o'clock position, and one at the 3 o'clock position. So I'm going to remove these screws as well. Now we're going to remove the steering wheel connector by pulling down on the red clip and then pressing the release clip and pulling down on the plug. This is the plug where we're going to make our connections for our remote starter. I'm going to use my razor knife being very careful. I'm going to remove some of this coating. Just need enough of this wire to be able to solder a pigtail to it. We're using an EVO-ALL from FORTIN. And we're also using the LC Pro from CRIMESTOPPER. This is a low current car, so we're just going to use what we need to start it. We are following FORTIN's guide for Golf and Passat. We're dealing with 5 wires at the ignition plug. We're dealing with the can high and can low. And we have a twisted pair with an orange and green and an orange and brown. Just going to strip back a little bit of the insulation. This red wire, red with black, is the starter wire. Black wire is the ignition. The red with the yellow is 12 volts positive. Okay, so we're going to strip a little bit on each of these wires. We're going to keep them separated to make sure they do not touch. Okay, we've made a lot of our common connections. Here, if you look at the diagram, there's a few connections that will be made to the ignition for the EVO-ALL as well. What we've done is we've combined them at this point in our harness, and we've soldered on a smaller gauge wire to make our actual connection with. This would be the can high, can low, these two, the gray and black and gray. This would be our primary ignition. This would be our starter wire, and this would go to constant power. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do our twist and wrap connections, and we're going to wrap these around the bare spots that we've made previously in the harness. It's nice this way because we've got it whittled down to 3 connections. And while we're making these connections, we're making the other connections because we've integrated the harness. So now we've connected the main power and we've connected the ignition. Now we're connecting the starter wire. And we're being careful to keep the wires apart the whole time we're working. Now the 2 connections we have left are can high, can low. In the diagram, they list the can low as orange and brown, can high as orange and green. So we're going to take our FORTIN can low, gray and black, and we're going to connect the gray and black to the orange and brown. You got to look close at the wires. The little color, the brown, is very small, and the green is very small stripe on these orange wires to identify can high and can low. Okay, we've just made all the connections that we should need to start this vehicle. We're going to go ahead and solder and tape them. Okay, we're going to solder each connection . By terminating all of the larger wires and consolidating everything down to these 3 small wires, it allows for efficient connecting into the small wires here. The CRIMESTOPPER LC Pro is unique in that it's a low current remote starter. It doesn't have a bunch of big wires coming off of it. The wires are fairly small, so it allows us to do this and to have it look neat without coming up to this ignition with 12 gauge wires. So we're going to go ahead and tape this up, and we're going to move on to the next step. The first wire we're going to tape is the constant power wire. That way we get this insulated and covered so we don't short the wires together. I don't think anything would happen, but it's just a bad idea to do that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to tape that wire first. We're going to tape each individual wire. Now we're moving on to the ignition wire. Next wire would be the starter wire. Now we're going to do the can high and the can low as well. Okay. Now that we have each wire taped individually, we're going to tape and protect the whole assembly. And we'll be able to plug the plug back into the ignition. At this point, I can pull my wires through my jacket here to even each one out. We can even move our jacket up. And what we'll do is we'll secure these wires along this harness and we'll route them down to the mounting point of the LC Pro. Okay, I'm showing you the wire routing from the underside of the dash to show you that you have to account for freedom of movement of the steering column. The steering column is telescopic and tilt. So we've routed our wires down this harness and we've made this little loop area right here so that when I telescope the wheel in, my harness is going to move to the back. When I pull it out, it's going to straighten out. So I've started my zip up with the wheel fully extended, and I've left this little loop here and the wire floating so that it can retract comfortably. I've also secured the rest of my harness to this tab on the side of the BCM holder here. We're going to continue on. I just wanted to let you know that you have to account for the steering wheel movement on this vehicle. Okay, now that we've accounted for the tilt and telescopic function of the steering wheel, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make our ground connection. After we make our ground connection, we can test the remote starter to make sure all the ignition connections are going to work. I've chosen to obtain my ground in the access panel on the driver's side of the dash. I've grounded the wire using a self-tapping tech head screw, and I've also routed my parking lights up to the light switch. At this point, we're ready to test our CrimeStopper LC Pro 1. I'm going to insert a key into the ignition, and we're going to press the button on the remote starter for 3 seconds. Our vehicle is going to start up at this point. In our FORTIN guide, shows doing a key wrap and having the EVO-ALL manage our transponder connection and actually cutting into the transponder wire. I've foregone this process and I'm using a CrimeStopper RS Tata customized, and I'll show you how I've done that. Basically, I've placed the induction loop around the ignition already, and I've connected my transponder wires to the LC Pro for activation when the vehicle remote starts. Using this assembly, it allows me to embed the OEM key in the transponder box, drape an induction ring around the ignition, and simply activate the remote starter transponder box on remote start. I'm going to show you where I've stowed it and how. Now I've mounted the transponder box in the side above the fuse box. If you look right here, I have the key cut in a hole in the side. The customer only had 2 keys and did not have the 3rd key for this vehicle. So I set this up so if they have a problem and they need to, they can take the zip tie, pull it, and extract their key and use it. I have removed the battery from the OEM remote so I can lock the doors. But this will serve useful and allowing them to have a remote starter, still have access to their key, and not purchase another key from the dealer. At this point, we're ready to program the EVO-ALL. You want to have your data wire connected to the remote starter. We want to press and hold the programming button on the top of the EVO-ALL down while we plug the 4-pin plug in. We want to release when the LED light is blue. The lights will cycle and alternate. If you miss the blue light coming on, because it's going to come on first, you can wait and it'll come back around. There's blue. We should have released then, but if we miss that, we wait, it'll come back around, we can release on solid blue. Now from this point, we want to plug in all the remaining connectors to the EVO-ALL. I'm going to plug the 20 pin in. We're going to plug the red plug in the back, and then we're going to plug the white plug in the back. At this point, we want to take the OEM key, place it in the ignition. We're going to turn the ignition to the on position, and we're going to wait for the EVO blue light to flash rapidly. When this happens, signifies that the EVO-ALL is programmed. We'll now shut the key off and remove it from the ignition. At this point, we should be able to lock and unlock the vehicle from our remote. And we should also be able to start the vehicle from our remote. We would also be able to pop the trunk. Okay, I want to give you a shot of the zip up of the LC Pro on this 13 Passat. If you look, I have it on the bottom of the BCM where the 3 plugs plug into the BCM. I've mounted the EVO-ALL right here. It's underneath the harness. I've also zipped the harnesses up to the EVO-ALL. You'll appreciate the LC Pro's small form factor when it's time to mount the remote starter. Our wires are routed up underneath our steering column. We've left the loop to provision for the telescopic tilt action of the steering wheel. And we've secured our connections in the steering column. Okay, I'm going to show you the operation of this 2013 Volkswagen Passat. Now keep in mind, we have not done the parking light connection. We simply have the switch in the auto position. To lock the doors, we'll press the close lock button. To unlock the doors, we'll press the unlock button. The doors will unlock and the lights will come on and stay on, lighting your way to the vehicle. We're going to remote start our vehicle. Press the bottom button on the remote for 3 seconds. The vehicle will crank and start. The vehicle will run for 20 minutes. We also have the trunk release working as well. Pop the trunk, we'll push the trunk release button. This will pop the vehicle's trunk. Our 2013 Volkswagen Passat uses an integrated key to operate the keyless entry, trunk release, and to start the vehicle. I've also configured for a single button solution for this vehicle. If you have the single button solution, to start the vehicle with a single button, you would press and hold the button for 3 seconds. The vehicle will crank and start, run for 20 minutes. Now when you walk up to the vehicle, if you try to use the factory remote to get in, it won't respond while the engine is running. The doors are locked, so when you walk up to the vehicle, you want to press and hold the button for the remote starter to unlock the doors to gain access to the vehicle. This allows you to carry a smaller remote and still be able to access the vehicle.